Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, before we jump into the technical analysis, I'm going to react to some of the comments we had from yesterday's video, okay? Now, I sometimes read comments, sometimes I don't, depending on how busy I am during the day, but most of the time I do read them, and most of the time they are, very, very supportive. Love you guys so much. The hate comments, they literally never bother me, but today we're going to react to some of the things people have said. Look, this Mercy Young guy said, full of poo. You guys know these guys get free tokens to try to get you to purchase. Don't be dumb. Ladies and gentlemen, oh, I wish that was the case. I wish I was getting paid by Turbo, getting some Turbo in my bank account for free, but that's not the case. And I'm pretty sure, I'm like 99% sure, legally, I have to tell you, all right? And you know what? If I was sponsored, if I did get paid, I would just tell you guys anyways. I would. Like, I'm not afraid to be like, oh no, like I'm not gonna pull off some scammy, shady stuff. Like, no, if I'm paid by somebody or company or a token, I'm gonna say this is a sponsored video, this is sponsored coin. It's very, very simple, right? And yeah, I love how some people think I could influence this coin to, make it go up so much. I mean, yeah, it's just people are funny, right? Turbo to the moon, go Turbo, make us rich, make us poor. No, Turbo will make us rich 100%. Turbo to the moon. Jeezy, you guys probably seen Jeezy in the comments a lot. I could be just one of those people that does block or hide from channel, but like I said, hate comments, whether towards me or videos or coins, never bother me. Like, I just usually have a laugh if I do see them. So this coin is over. Worst coin in crypto. Devs are scamming. The devs don't have the coins. This is a community driven coin, my boy. This is why Turbo is getting bought by exchanges and big institutions. This is why. You think if the devs were scamming, you think if the devs had a big wallet that all these exchanges and big money would be flooding into this coin? Absolutely not. Same, another coin by Jeezy won't even hit 2 cents. I would bet my whole life savings and all my money in crypto that we will. Peter said, Turbo price has done nothing, sell and buy something else and make money. The price is up 2.8% for the month. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, look, this is just how things work. We'll explain this whole Bitcoin thing in just a second, right? As I do expect Bitcoin to drop and I expect Turbo to drop, you have to realize that after a huge pump like this, the markets need time to recover. Historically, like these types of big pumps, you see like this big green candle, they only happen consistently for, a handful of weeks under certain extreme circumstances. Okay. And usually they happen when it's altcoin season time. Okay. Now, this is how it's going to look like during the peak of Turbo, right? We're going to use XRP as an example because XRP actually was like the best example I could think of. So you know how XRP exploded back in early November and it was just going up consistently for very big weekly candles for like 4 weeks? That is just how altcoin season is going to be at the very end, right? You're going to see Turbo is going to be rising over the next couple of months, but then during the peak of altcoin season that usually lasts only for 4 weeks, that's when you're going to see consistent green candles, and that's when you're going to want it to get out. Because usually, historically, after that is just a massive sell-off. Okay, it just really is. I mean, we can see it once again here, right back in 2017. 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week sell-off. Guys, big green candles, they just can't happen consistently. It takes time. In fact, if you want consistent green candles, they require a lot of sideways movement. Think about it. When something goes sideways in the markets, it's actually like powering up to make a move to the upside. Okay, that is just how it is. That is just reality. We talked about global liquidity for this coin, how next week there should be green pumps, and we talked about how this week should be a sell-off manipulation of some sorts, whether it's going to this green box or below the lines, and then we expect something like this to blast off for the next week, right? And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, we'll pull up the indicator very quickly. We'll go over this very, very quickly because I don't want to repeat the same things, too much. But just in case there are some new viewers or just in case someone missed it the first time, we know that global liquidity, right? If we take the top of the global liquidity before it sold off to the top of Turbo's, boom, 91 days. If we take the bottom before it starts going green, Boom, 91 days. And guess what? We are right here in terms of the global liquidity. So we're expecting to be pumping in general consistently until mid-July, right? And guess what? We take it from the bottom. Boom, we are at 91 days. So next week is expected to be green. And we talked about this for the last couple of weeks. We talked about it previously, how, listen, man, I already thought there was already decent like reversal signs here. And I believe that was the case. And then like the next day, Ethereum and Bitcoin went absolutely nuclear, which carried Turbo. But right after that, everything has just been going down, selling off and going sideways, right? Which we also talked about that. So, it is expected when a coin pumps like 160%, it's bound to slow down for a little bit because it's rebuilding a base so it can go up once again. Okay. I read the article and I really don't see how they are teaming up because this is about Veracity. So listen, we haven't got the most amount of info about Veracity, even though we did read the article yesterday. It was just a little bit more insight than what we already knew. At the bare minimum, exposure is exposure. Teaming up with a company with a Twitter page and everything that has like 400,000 followers is always going to put some eyes on the table, right? That's always going to, put some eyes from investors, from other exchanges, from big boys, because that's just how it works. That's just how it works. If we're going to 20 cents or more, then we have to eclipse the all-time high before all season begins. In my opinion, yeah, I agree. I think we're back to those levels with our next pump. Okay, people are talking. Never will happen. This dude has been wrong every time. We've been watching videos saying pump incoming soon. It doesn't pump. No one can predict the future. Look, I haven't been always right, but I have been right most of the time. And at the end of the day, the only thing about being right matters is, buying fairly low and just trying to sell near the top at the end of the day, right? In terms of this channel, right? In terms of this channel, the one thing I was 100% wrong on was I thought, if you guys were watching, I thought back here, we were going to see higher pumps, right? That's what I thought. But we did also talk about how the technical analysis, right, was suggesting lower highs each time. So, what I think and what the analysis says is something different, right? I've said it before and I'll say it again. Those are two separate things, right? When I predicted, I believed, this was a great time to be buying because I thought this was going to be a prime opportunity reversals, right? This was before I had all of the extra data in front of me, right? But we talked about it during that time too, that, hey guys, listen, unfortunately, we are getting consistent lower highs. And lower lows consistently, and we are expected to drop even lower, right? We talked about that. But then once it started to reverse, we talked about the reversals coming because then we had confirmation for the data, right? So sometimes what I want isn't necessarily going to happen. And that's why I always recommend people to watch as much as they can in the videos, because what I want or expect doesn't necessarily always align with what the data says, right? Because sometimes we need to wait for more data. That's just how trading works, right? But the beautiful thing is with us buying crypto, like even if you did buy in these areas, right, and they're not 100% perfect, that's fine because your dollar cost averaging at a very low price, right? Same thing if you're buying in recent times and you bought around the 0.05 area. Like this, for example, right? The analysis shows sells. Why we've been talking about it, how this week was going to be most likely sells, happening. And that was based off the structure breaking. That was based off the liquidity, right? So we had some data, but it's also my assumption. Then we also had a couple of weekdays of, buying candles. And then I was like, okay, guys, we are going to be selling. We are, because the data is very, very weak, right? And guess what? We are selling off. Now, I expect to go at least this green box and potentially, wipe this area. That's why I have this black line down here. Does that mean it's going to 100% happen? No, that doesn't mean it's going to 100% happen. Is there high probability? Yes, right? If the candles come down here and then they start showing reversal signs to go up, then I'm going to let you guys know. And then, something like this sweep of these lows never happened. But that's just the way how it is with a trader sometimes, we don't literally always know 100% where it's going to go exactly. But once there's like signs of his saying, okay, it's going to go lower or it's going to go higher, then that's when I can say 100%, okay, yes, I'm confirming this. You know, like even in the Discord earlier today, I called out, you know, guys, we should be heading to lower levels with Bitcoin. Why? You know, even though this was my anticipation for this week, we had these highs over here. Then we had 2 days of, you know, trying to push up, but creating lower highs. And now we're selling off. And I expect for it to continue through this week to go lower, right? Now, my next point of confirmation is to print a lower low than this black line over here. I would want to see closes below 107,260 bucks, right? More or less. That's what I would love for the most. But we already have signs of, you know, we already have some signs that we are going to go lower, right? We broke through the daily trend, right? The daily trend broke, boom, 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 right? We have lower highs. I expect Bitcoin to go lower based off this confirmation. Before, a couple of days ago, it was still technically speculation. So I hope this made sense. I said the same point like 3 different ways, right? Because I said I do believe there's gonna be sells this week, but a couple of days ago, it was still technically speculation. Now that I have more confirmation, right, which required a couple more days, then I could tell you confidently, yes, I do expect Bitcoin to be going lower, which means I expect Turbo to be going lower, right? We have points of liquidity on this chart over here, right? So, you know, it is a decent probability that we will sweep some of them before we go up, but that doesn't mean it has to happen, because, you know, something with Bitcoin historically, you know, sometimes it just respects the trend. So, you know, that's why I said I expect Bitcoin to go to 103, 104,000, and then potentially go up. Do I know 100%? No. But in the moment when I see it bounce off certain candles or, you know, do reversal signs, that's when I can say, okay, guys, these are going to be the bottoms. And the same thing with Turbo. So yeah, hopefully that, you know, explained it very, very well. But yeah, we're going to the moon. First view, shout out to you, Bobby. Man, I'm hoping we get to the 0.008 soon. Very, very soon. Should be happening, you know, next week, most likely, according to global liquidity. Over the next 1 to 2 weeks maximum, I'm saying that we're going to start pumping, right? I really do believe, based off the global liquidity, based off the analysis, it is just manipulation, right? It's just manipulation, and it is going up. Also, right, we talked about, just in case you guys need further proof, we talked about it on this channel. You know, crypto markets will trick you to sell, right? We talked about this. Is going to be technically, by the time you see this, already like 3 days ago, because it says 1 day, but this is already technically 2 days. And by the time you see this, it's going to be like 3 days. So we talked about this, right? We talked about this in advance. Some people believe trading is gambling. All of this means is just nothing. But for me, this always makes sense. And if there's always going to be any mistake, it's always going to be on my end, or some next level news came out, and not because the charts are lying. But yeah, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Different type of video today. You know, overall, the blueprint is something like this for this coin. You know, I don't expect it to be going to these bottoms over here, according to the data, the global liquidity, and everything else. But some type of bigger retracements this week are, you know, going to happen. They are going to happen. So yeah, that is, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.